Imagine you are descending into total darkness. Not the darkness of a turned off lamp or a cloudy night sky. This is absolute darkness. The kind that presses against your eyes, that wraps around your chest, that makes you question whether you still exist. You've been climbing down for days. Your team hasn't seen sunlight in 72 hours. The pressure inside your ears feels like two fists slowly squeezing your skull. The temperature has dropped to near freezing. Your oxygen supply is finite. And then your headlamp catches something on the wall, something that should not be there. Something alive, not a fossil, not a trace, not a footprint from 1,000,000 years ago. Something alive, breathing, moving, existing, in a place where life, by every law of science, simply should not exist. This is not a science fiction story. This is not a movie. This actually happened. 2 kilometers below the surface of the Earth in the deepest cave system ever explored by human beings. And what scientists found there didn't just surprise them, it changed everything they thought they knew. We tend to look outward when we search for the unknown. We point telescopes at distant galaxies. We launch probes toward the edges of the solar system. We stare at the sky as if the answers are always somewhere above us. But the deepest mystery on Earth was beneath us all along. The Veryovkina cave, located in the Arabica Massif of the Republic of Georgia, currently holds the record as the deepest known cave system on the planet, reaching a verified depth of over 2,212 meters. That's more than 7,000 feet below the surface. To put that in perspective, you could drop the Eiffel Tower into this cave and then drop another one on top of it, and you'd still have space left over. But depth alone isn't what makes Veryovkina terrifying. What makes it terrifying is what waited at the bottom, patiently, silently, in complete and utter darkness, for scientists to finally come close enough to find it. And honestly, this channel exists for exactly these kinds of stories. The ones that live just outside the edges of what we're told to know. If that thought alone gives you chills, you're already in the right place. Now, let's go down. It began, as most great discoveries do, not with a grand announcement, but with obsession. The cave was first explored seriously in the 1980s by Soviet speleologists, scientists who specialize in the study of caves. They came equipped with ropes, lights, and a deep, almost religious curiosity about what lay beneath the Caucasus Mountains. But the cave fought them. Massive underground waterfalls roared through narrow passages. Freezing water flooded entire corridors without warning. The walls closed in, widened, then closed in again, as if the cave itself was breathing. One wrong move, one rope failure, one unexpected surge of water, and you don't come back. For decades, different teams pushed deeper, section by section. Each attempt set a new world record. Each attempt also sent men home with broken ribs, hypothermia, and in some cases, with something harder to name. A certain quiet in their eyes that didn't exist before. By 2018, a Russian team finally reached the current confirmed bottom, 2,212 meters down. What they encountered on the descent wasn't just physical extremity, it was psychological. Below 1,000 meters, your brain begins doing things it wasn't designed to do. The silence becomes so complete that you can hear your own heartbeat echo off the walls. Your sense of time completely dissolves. An hour can feel like 10 minutes. Or 10 hours? You genuinely cannot tell. Some team members reported a strange sensation, like being watched, not by each other, by the cave itself. They pressed on anyway, because that's the thing about the people who descend into places like this. They are not reckless. They are not thrill seekers. They are scientists. And scientists, when they sense something inexplicable, don't run away. They go deeper. As the team descended past the 1,500 meter mark, the cave began revealing things that defied their geological models. The rock formations were wrong. Not unusual wrong, structurally wrong. Formations that typically take tens of thousands of years to develop appeared in places and orientations that suggested water movement from directions that simply didn't fit the known geography above. It was like reading a sentence backwards. Recognizable but unsettling. The deeper they went, the more the cave seemed to operate by its own rules. Then they found the water. At extreme depth, an enormous underground lake, dark, still, and impossibly ancient. The water didn't ripple. It absorbed their headlamp beams like black glass. Samples collected from this subterranean lake would later be dated, showing the water had been isolated from the surface world for an estimated 10,000 to 15,000 years. That water had been sitting there, sealed in darkness, since before human civilization as we know it even began. But then, something unexpected happened. When scientists analyzed the biological samples collected from the lake's sediment, they found microbial life, not the presence of ancient fossilized microbes, living organisms, and not just any organisms. Previously undiscovered species, life forms that had never been classified, never named, never seen by human eyes before that moment, creatures that had been evolving, adapting, and surviving for potentially thousands of years in complete isolation from the sun, from oxygen as we know it, from any nutrient source we'd consider viable. They had developed entirely new biological mechanisms to exist, and nobody saw this coming because the scientific consensus for most of the 20th century held that life required certain basic conditions to persist. Light or heat from volcanic activity, or at bare minimum, some chemical connection to the surface world. Veryovkina broke all three assumptions simultaneously. This wasn't just a discovery, this was a rewrite. But this was only the beginning, because once scientists knew what to look for, unique metabolic signatures, bizarre cellular structures, completely novel genetic sequences, they started finding traces of similar life in other deep cave systems around the world. Romania, Ukraine, South Africa, New Mexico. Each cave its own sealed world. Each cave hiding its own impossible ecosystem. The most famous example, Movile Cave in Romania, had been sealed from the surface for an estimated 5 million years. Inside, scientists discovered 48 species found nowhere else on Earth. Spiders without eyes, crustaceans adapted to breathe chemically toxic air, an entire food chain that operated entirely independent of sunlight. Powered instead by chemosynthesis, organisms converting toxic hydrogen sulfide gas into usable energy. 5 million years to grasp that. Modern humans as a species have only existed for roughly 300,000 years. Whatever lives in these caves has been perfecting its existence for 17 times longer than we've been alive. And here's the part that the headlines rarely discuss. when astrobiologists, scientists who study the possibility of life beyond Earth, reviewed the findings from Veryovkina and Movile, they didn't just take note. They got very excited because the conditions inside these deep cave systems, absolute darkness, extreme pressure, chemically hostile water, complete isolation from solar energy, mirror the subsurface conditions believed to exist on several bodies in our own solar system. Europa, Jupiter's icy moon. Beneath its frozen crust lies a liquid ocean kept warm by tidal forces, sealed from sunlight. Enceladus, Saturn's moon, hydrothermal vents beneath an ice shell actively shooting water vapor into space. Mars, evidence of ancient subterranean water networks, possibly still liquid in isolated pockets deep below the frozen surface. If life found a way to thrive in Veryovkina, in Movile, in conditions we once called impossible, then the question is no longer whether life could exist on these worlds. The question becomes, when do we go look? And then came the final revelation, the one that makes even veteran scientists pause. Some of the genetic sequences recovered from Veryovkina's deepest biological samples, when run through global genetic databases, came back with a result that stopped the laboratory cold. No match, not a distant evolutionary cousin, not a degraded sequence that kind of resembled something known. No match at all. Not to any organism, not to any known branch of life, not to bacteria, archaea, fungi, or any of the 3 domains of life currently recognized by science. What this means, what scientists are still carefully, quietly debating, is the possibility that what lives at the bottom of the deepest cave on Earth may represent a 4th domain of life, a lineage that branched off so long ago, evolved so separately, so deeply, so completely in isolation, that it no longer shares the fundamental genetic markers we use to define living things as we know them. Something that is alive, but not like us, not like anything. There is a particular kind of silence that exists at 2,000 meters below the surface of the Earth. It is not the silence of emptiness. It is the silence of waiting. The cave has been there for millions of years. The life inside it has been there, adapting, breathing, evolving for longer than human memory can reach. And for all of that time, it existed without us, without our names for it, without our classifications, without our need to understand it. It simply was. And maybe that's the most unsettling part of this entire story. Not what was found, but what it implies. If life this foreign, this unrecognizable, this ancient can exist 2 kilometers below our feet without us ever suspecting it, what else is down there? What other systems, sealed for millions of years, are we still decades or centuries away from reaching? How much of life, real life, the full spectrum of what existence can mean, have we not even begun to classify? We have mapped the surface of Mars in higher resolution than we have mapped the floors of our own ocean. We have named thousands of stars we will never visit, and yet 2 kilometers beneath the mountains of Georgia lives something we had no name for, something science had declared, by all formal logic, impossible. The cave doesn't care what we think is possible. It never did. And somewhere, right now, in a laboratory, somewhere quiet with fluorescent lights humming overhead and a coffee going cold on a desk, a scientist is staring at a genetic sequence on a screen. No match found. Running search again. No match found. And they are sitting back in their chair. And they are smiling. Because this story, the deepest cave, the impossible life, the unnamed domain, this is only the surface of what's been discovered in the hidden underground worlds of this planet. And in the next documentary, we go somewhere even darker, somewhere the maps run out entirely. Subscribe, and we'll go there together.